Well, hi everybody, and welcome to another one of the CARB 2020 Hall of Fame inductee videos. And today we've got Buddy Cagle here with us, and Clayton also. And we're going to talk to Buddy and Clayton a little bit about his career in racing. And first of all, just let me say, Buddy, congratulations on being inducted into the CARB Hall of Fame. I know that you and your family are probably really feeling honored, as most of those that are going in are.
Yes, we are.
You know, I can't hear you.
You may have to speak up a little bit. Yes, we're
here.
very proud and very honored to be able to be here with him. And this is my first time. My sister's here basically for her second or third time.
Oh, really?
For him.
Yeah. It is quite an honor. I mean, when you just stop and think about the people that are already in the hall, and especially a lot of them that are coming from what your classification for the hall is going to be, the pioneers. I mean, these are the people that kind of blazed the trail for racing in, you know, the Central States area here in Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, around in here. And from what I've heard from Buddy's career, man, pretty storied career.
A very storied career.
Yeah.
He did a lot of racing, and you know, one of the things that he has been referred to as a journeyman, because he raced for a lot of different people and raced all over the country, and did even during his term in the service in 55 and 56.
Absolutely. Buddy's racing interest started out with two broken arms. Now somebody's got to tell me about this. How can you start a racing career with two broken arms?
You want to tell him the story about Felix Graves putting you in the car with your broken arms?
Well, the story goes that I had two broken arms. I was a sophomore in high school, and they said, don't be climbing the trees.
Don't climb no trees.
Don't climb the trees.
I think you were a lot younger than a sophomore in high school.
Well, it might have been.
Yeah.
But, anyway, I went ahead and played Tarzan.
Played Tarzan.
Fell out of the tree, jumped out of a tree, and broke both arms, and that put me kind of on Broadway as Buddy Cagle, and kind of as a 15-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And they targeted me as Tarzan. Said,
Who did you race for?
Yeah.
my kids.
Yeah.
Who did you race for?
How did the two broken arms connect you with racing? From what I understand, you kind of started hanging out around some guy's speed shop or something.
Well,
You were hanging out with Felix Graves, his shop.
first that come along later, but this all happened to me. It happened. I'm just bumfuzzled that this has happened to me, and just has absolutely taken me by surprise that I've been recommended for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's a surprise to all of us. I know the feeling that you have, exactly, because it was a big surprise.
But just to finish the story, he was a young kid with two broken arms watching the cars, and Mr. Graves saw him, said, bring that kid over here, and brought him over and put him in his first race car. And then he started just hanging out with that guy and learning a lot about race cars when he was very young.
Yeah. But when the racing actually kind of starts, from what I understand, is that somebody got a fake birth certificate at 18 years old, and the driving age to get in a race car was 21, and had to be 21 to race, buddy. How did you get hooked up on that deal? What was your first race car?
Oh boy, that's I was a junior in high school and hung around the racetrack and hung around a race car and a race car garage, and finally through the acquaintance of knowing that I could warm a car up and used to to be able to run the old cars. They were new then. We just had to run them in, and I hung around the old garage. It's not a old race car back then. It was a new race car, and I was asked to help run them in. So we would run them around this homemade racetrack.
Yeah, kind of break them in, get them where they were ready to race.
That was the name of the game. And gosh, you guys have got me a long ways from home.
That is true.
Yes, it is.
His first race was in 1948 in Dewey, Oklahoma. And it had something to do with Johnny Rutherford?
Well, no, it was later years, and Jonathan Rutherford and his family lived in Tulsa.
Oh, okay.
That he did the same thing as they did with him. He lifted up the little Johnny Rutherford when he was younger and put him in the car later on somewhere. So that's that story. But his first one, I think he was still not driving yet, and his mother had to drive him there or something. That's the story I remember. So
really?
Yeah. So
wow. Drive him to the track so he could race?
So he could race.
Really? That sounds like a lot of these kids we got racing nowadays. They don't have a driver's license.
Right.
But they're out there racing. Some of them have been racing for 8 or 9 years by the time they get there.
Exactly.
It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. In 1950, racing for Angelino Howerton at tracks like Little Rock, Memphis, Buddy would get his first AAA win. And boy, big money, I'm sure, for back in those days, $700 to be exact. Buddy, you remember anything about racing there in the AAA?
Well, you had to be 21 years old to be able to run AAA. So we stretched the truth a little bit, and the Henry Horseman, we lied about my age, and the local promoter promoted me from, I went up to the gate to sign in, and they said, "Cagle, you can't ride, you can't drive tonight. You're too young." And I said, "Well, you have to be 21." So went home, made this deal up. So I lied about my age. And lo and behold, when I was a junior in high school, I become 21 years old.
All of a sudden you turn 21.
My dad, mom signed the affidavit
Really?
to clear the they had an affidavit that let me have permission to go to to race.
Yeah.
And so
Cleared the way.
I went back to the, I'm telling stories that probably shouldn't tell.
It's too late now.
Yes, it is too late, but it started off at 15 years old.
Wow. Yeah. It sounds like that maybe your parents too weren't exactly that happy about this racing deal. I know with talking with Clayton, I think he said that your mom was kind of on the fence, kind of was for it, but your dad didn't think it was such a great idea.
Well, it was made driving a race car made me very popular at school, driving a race car and knowing that Will Rogers High School student was able to drive a race car.
Yeah, I bet.
And down there in Oklahoma, I was going to drive a race car.
Yeah.
So we had an old doctor friend that that he false the birth certificate.
Oh, did he? He was in on it too. Huh?
Yeah, so we made me. I went from 18 to 21.
21.
To 21.
Yeah.
And the race was on.
Yeah. The races were on after that. It sounds like you had a little time in the Army too. I'm not sure what year it was, but anyway, when you got back in '55, you were starting to drive midgets for John Zink. And John Zink, of course, was the guy who was the car owner of a couple of wins at Indy 500 in '55 and '56. It sounds like, really without a lot of racing experience, that you were getting hooked up with a guy that really knew what he was doing.
Yeah, of course, hanging around that garage.
Yeah.
Felix Graves was his name, and he started a lot of new guys, and
you were one of the up and comers then. You were climbing up the totem pole.
Yes, you guys have got me up here in Yankee land, and
Yankee land.
Wow.
You're really sad about that.
You're in Jayhawk country, kind of.
Yeah,
Missouri.
right. Yeah.
So
Across the river, but
tell them about Jack Zink a little bit and how you got to racing with them in the '50s.
Well, Jack and I grew up together,
Oh, really?
and Jack Zink, his car, he got Jimmy Reese to drive, and Jack and I was the same age I was, but if I could do it, then he'd do it.
Mm-hmm.
So we both started at the same time.
Yeah.
And
Him more as a car owner and you as a driver, or did he race?
no, Jack Zink started out same time, same station
Yeah.
as Buddy Cagle did.
Okay.
And I also started my championship trail
Mm-hmm. About the same time?
at the same time.
Yeah. Okay.
But I can't, I just can't come up with anything that
Yeah. That's okay. That's all
that
right.
we should do.
Yeah. Clayton, what do you know what type of cars that he was running here now during this period for Zink?
Well, he was mostly running the midgets or just doing local stuff, but he was still running the champ cars at that time, and
Okay.
getting a taste of it. And he raced one of his races he was in was with in AAA, the very last race of AAA, when Jack McGrath was killed.
Okay.
And he raced with that one, and before it turned into USAC.
Oh,
at
okay.
that. So
Yeah.
he was running the big cars, and he was just racing all kinds of different cars
Yeah.
at that time. So that was his claim to fame, was the owners would call him and
Right.
give him the chance to drive their cars when
Yeah.
they were looking for someone.
That was so true of the drivers of this era.
A
It
lot.
seems like a few of them owned some cars, but most of them were just from ride to ride to ride, just whatever they could pick up as they went along. And
Right.
sounds like Buddy was kind of in that deal and under quite a bit of demand as a driver, because like I say, he was slowly climbing up that ladder of being successful in a race car. Now, I don't know if this is the proper time or not, but there's a story about somewhere in this area about an admiral having to give Buddy permission to drive at a race in Indy.
He had a lot of support from the Navy when he was in it. And they
No, he
knew
was in the Navy?
He was in the Navy, yes.
Oh, I
You had
said
mentioned
Army.
yeah, but
Okay.
he's in the Navy.
Okay.
And he did have to get a lot of, for him to go and practice the qualifying and go there and stuff. And I think really he didn't even tell them the truth at the time, that he was just going to go there and watch.
Yeah.
But he did pass his rookie test in
Yeah.
55, and so that was a big step. But it did have to go up to the higher ups
Oh, really?
in order for him to get permission to go there.
Yeah,
And because of his driving skills, they also at times they had him driving an ambulance during the
Oh, my
Navy's
gosh.
time. So
Wow. Okay. I know about that. I did that for a while.
right,
But an admiral had to give permission, Buddy. I mean,
it had to go up to the big guy. Yeah. So
I'm surprised that they even questioned anything about it, because so many athletes now, Olympics, whatever, will go under the Army, Navy banner or whatever, and it's good publicity for them. So I'm surprised that there was any resistance to it at all.
There
Right.
wasn't. There wasn't.
But,
And
yeah.
he even cut his arm off one time and raced, and then came back and got in the hospital bed, and the admiral came in and said, "So how are you doing, Mr. Cagle?" And he said, "Just fine." And then he flipped out the newspaper, and he was on the front page.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
you were telling me that story, yeah.
yeah.
Pretty neat, all right. Buddy was also driving champ cars for owners like Lee Elkins and Pete Salemi. That how you pronounce it?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those guys, he never told me a lot of those stories. So, but he did drive for a lot of, he was offered many, many rides. And the only time the best story I ever heard was when he crashed at Indianapolis I think it was during practice, and he got hurt. And that story that he told as to why he never went back to Indianapolis and raced was because of that wreck, and he was in the hospital. And the way he always tells the story, he always had a side story with it. And after his face hit the windshield, it split his nose in two, and it had to go in. And he asked the doctor, he said, "Doc, are you going to make me look better?" And he goes, "I'm going to have you looking like a movie star." But he said, "I don't know if it'll be Donald Duck or Donald Duck or Mickey Mouse, but it'll be one of them." So, but he went back out after a couple of weeks. They had the car fixed. He jumped in the car, decided to take it around. He said he came around and got up to speed and was hitting. At that time, they had the full front stretch full of the bricks still. Hit the bricks, and he said he suddenly remembered that when he was in the middle of that spin, when he got out of it, he actually spun, came out of it, put his foot back in the throttle, hit the wall. So when he got back in and he said he made a promise to God that he would never race at this track. So he never did.
Yeah.
So
It still amazes me how much in that time frame, how so many of these guys were actually dirt car racers, but yet one time a year they would go up and race on the bricks and
right.
asphalt or whatever they had at the time up there with no experience. And of course doing speeds that were just crazy off the wall compared to what they were used to. Buddy, do you remember much at all about driving at Indy? Is there anything you can tell us about that?
Well, I qualified in 55, 56, and as a driver.
Uh-huh.
And so then I crashed.
Uh-huh.
And I had the longest slide in the history of the Speedway in 1955, I guess it was.
The longest slide. Well, that's something.
Yeah.
Do I have?
Down through the short chute at the first turn, and on through, and slide through this first turn, and slid off into the grass,
Yeah.
back off and out of the grass, hit the pavement, and Faulkner, and I can't remember who it was, but the driver said, always turn right.
Oh, really?
Never turn left. And
Just the opposite of what you were normally doing.
it did. And I let my brain override and overshoot me.
Let your brain overdo it.
And that caused me to, along that slide, I slipped her into the wall.
Yeah.
And
Let me ask you this, buddy, about driving at Indy. Let me ask you one more thing. Did the speeds really seem that fast when you got up there, more so than what you did from running the dirt tracks?
well, the speed didn't. We only run
130 miles an hour?
135 was
Yeah.
top speed.
Huh.
I hate to leave this, but I'm having trouble.
I think you're doing pretty good,
Doing
man.
all right.
You're doing pretty
just
good.
fine.
I asked you one off the wall there, and you had an answer. Now I like that. It had to be fun driving at Indy, I'm sure. But in the '50s, Buddy Cagle's name was a name that was mentioned with all of the great midget drivers of the era. I mean, now let's just think about this list, okay? When I read this off, how about Troy Ruttman?
1960 winner, right?
Yeah. Roger Ward.
1962.
A.J. Foyt.
Yeah, we know about him.
Jimmy Reese.
Yeah.
Of course, some local guys here. Judd Larson, Vito Calia, Bill Chenault, Tony Bentonhausen, Johnny Parsons.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, come on.
He was right there with them.
We're listing the who's who of
Right.
racing at that time.
Right.
And
right.
Buddy Cagle was in there. Buddy, was there any of those guys that you liked to race with or didn't like to race with? If you can remember all those names I just told you.
Well, we lived in a different era
Absolutely.
than they live today.
Yes.
And I need
You need to go.
to take a breather.
Okay. Also about this same time frame, Buddy not only driving, but he's also working on some of the Indy car teams as a pits person, I'll get it straight,
Right.
and helping out. Do you know, Clayton, who were some of the teams that he was
Well,
in?
I know he helped out with John Zink program a
Okay.
little bit one year, and I believe it was the '59 year. He was kind of in between, just racing here and there, but he was there in '59, I believe it was, and I'm not sure who was driving though. I can't remember who it was for driving at that time.
Boy, very, very impressive. Like I say, with Zink winning some of the races up there, just it had to be so much fun to work on those teams, I'm sure, for him.
Right.
Plus knowledgeable. I'm sure even some of that stuff transferred over from those cars into what they were racing on dirt.
Absolutely. I think his knowledge of building cars and being innovative and trying to push the envelope, and as you always say, I'm just always looking for a better mousetrap.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And so he would try a lot of different things, but from the knowledge he gained from it was 15 years or 16 years worth of stuff before he came back to Tulsa.
Right. But during the 60s, now Buddy's attention kind of turns more toward the super modified ranks, as I presume he's racing more locally there in Oklahoma.
Right. He came back around 61, 62, and he started him and Denny Moore, who was mechanic a lot on the John Zink cars, were very, very good friends. And I remember telling them the story that they watched the race in '62 or something, so they said, I think we can build a car better than anybody else. So they built a car in '63, and then they went through '64, and then '64 was their first championship in Tulsa.
Yeah, and then there was kind of a string of them right after that.
Right.
Buddy, boy, winning championships in '64, '65, and '66, plus another one at Muskogee. Was there any one of those that was a favorite championship or favorite track that you like to run at during that time in those super modifieds?
Oh, gosh. You guys are just...
Wearing you out, ain't we?
You're taking me by surprise.
Yeah.
Go ahead and give us a minute.
If you can, Buddy, I want you to try and tell me about this car that you built with an upside down frame. You remember doing that?
Yeah. Sitting in my garage one time, one night, I'm looking at our rules. I'm looking at this old 32 model frame and so I can look at it and see where all the pressure points and everything is the same, except old Henry just had turned it upside down.
You mean Henry Ford? I presume.
Well, anyway, to make a story, here's the story. Here we go. I was putting a roll cage on it. You have a frame, and you put the roll frame on it. Well, I had the frame upside down, and I was cutting the different articles
Bars and stuff.
off of it, making it slick. And we had visitors all the time. And so we're putting a frame on the doggone thing. We started putting the roll cage on it. And
Let's just say you found out that it was going to make the car run lower.
well,
How about that? by flipping the frame over, it was going to lower the car, which was going to give you
Right.
an advantage, but it was still within the rules.
Right.
Okay, that, right, sounds like a pretty neat deal.
That was it. And it caught wind, and the local TV crew, Channel 6, Cagle, the CBS crew, came out. They also interviewed him and stuff on what he was trying to do and everything. And there were a lot of protests from around, but they couldn't technically say they didn't say you could not turn it upside down.
Right.
So he ended up getting to race it and went on to win the championship that
Right,
year.
again.
In 65.
Yeah, okay. What can you tell us about the flying bathtub, Clayton?
The flying bathtub, that was built in 1970. It was built out of almost all airplane parts. It was riveted together with a lot of the tubing. We had a huge piece of sheet metal that went around. It was what he called a semi-monocoque type.
Okay.
And he kind of got the idea from the stuff going on at Indy and built it that way. But once he had the frame and he got the shell built around him, and the best part was he didn't have a lot of help at the time, so he's doing all the rivets. So I, as a 13-year-old boy, he'd take me in there, and I had my first little anvil. He'd go, hold it tight, and he'd hit those things, and we did, I don't know how many, there was a bunch of rivets in that car, wasn't there? In that 1970 car?
1,500.
Oh my
1,500
gosh.
rivets. But it was a great car.
Yeah.
It ended up being almost 500 pounds lighter than
Really?
the average car, so
Right.
he was able to disperse the weight wherever he felt was needed.
Yeah.
And his other story on that car was A.J. Foyt at the time was going to give him a 302 Ford, one of the big engines at the time, and it disappeared. Nobody knew what happened. So he stuck a 218 old aluminum Oldsmobile in it, and went out the first time with two little skinny tires and won the first time out.
Oh,
with
really?
Him. So
Yeah.
he thought we had another great little car at the time, and he did really well with it. So
I think you told me he eventually wrecked it, and he had a comment after the race to you about the rivets.
after he wrecked it, he flipped it. It was a hard flip, and he walked away from it, kind of. But he said, but at least we didn't pop a rivet. So it held together the whole time through, going through the air and crashing.
Yeah, absolutely. And what track was that at?
That was at Muskogee in 1971.
1971. I presume this was kind of in that period when maybe his career was starting to wind down a little.
At that point in time, it was starting to kind of wind down a little bit, and he did sustain some injuries where he was out of racing for a while before he came back, and really he kind of came back later just kind of for fun and doing it himself. So he was the track manager in 1974 for the big track the first year, and did a lot of that stuff back then with the track. But he did race eventually back on the track, but he was just kind of doing it more for pleasure.
Right. I know you and I talked on the phone, and I mentioned this to you. Do you know, does Buddy have a favorite moment that he has in racing?
Well, I'm not sure, but he did speak about Langhorne when he got second place at that one, and I wish I could remember the year, but it was under.
Yeah, I think I seen that. I should have wrote it down.
It was under the old AAA banner, and he did speak about that. It was a pretty exciting race for him at that time.
Yeah. Buddy, I got one more question for you, buddy. I hear you're kind of a marksman. You a good shooter? You like guns? Well, he laughed about it.
My dad loaded his own ammo.
Most of the guys that shoot a lot do. It's a lot less expensive,
I'm
isn't
looking
it? Yeah, big elk down there.
Yeah, one up right there. But I was born with a BB gun.
Yeah, I've been that route myself. I know what you're talking about.
So, but I was very fortunate to have a BB gun at a young age, and I just can't remember. We being in the plumbing business,
Uh-huh.
I was able to come up with a patent on a cable feeder.
We referred to ourselves as sewerologists. We cleaned
Sewerologists.
sewers.
Okay.
And, but he came up with a machine. He got patented a little device that would put the cable in. You never had to put your hands back on the spinning cable.
Oh, really?
At all. So he could grab it and do it. And
Oh, I see.
we could knock out in half the time what most people could
Yeah.
do.
Now,
So because of that.
would that be considered a forerunner to the, I can't remember what they're called now, sewer cleaners that they have nowadays? Roto-Rooter, thank
well,
you.
kind of,
Thank
yeah.
you.
They started about the same time, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay.
But as far as his shooting was concerned, he did a lot of reloading himself, but he was an expert shot, and he also enjoyed black powder
Right.
shooting
That's
as
what I
well.
thought. Yeah,
And,
you had said that.
He was really good at it. He was a great shot.
Yeah.
But I think his dad was better, right?
Yeah.
Grandpa Doc.
Yeah.
He was a good
He
shot.
was a good shot, too.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, I'll be darned. Okay. Sounds like a lot of fun. Got to have another hobby.
Yeah, right, exactly.
That's the way men are. Got to have another hobby. But Clayton, we're about to wrap this up. I was just wondering, I know you were going to talk to your dad. Did you come up with a list of any of the people that he might want to thank for some of the stuff over the years?
Well, I know he's very thankful. He's had a lot of help from a lot of different people over the years, and but I know his getting started with Felix Graves and that crew and in the Zincs, but really people like Denny Moore, Herschel Goodnight, guys that he had, George Platter, just people that he had around him a lot who were good friends and helped him throughout the years that he was winning. So, I think that's who is really with everybody, and also his mom and dad were, very supportive. In fact, his dad, when somebody sat in front of us at the local racetrack, if they booed him, he'd beat them.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, with the newspaper. Said, "Get out of here, Lee!" with the program. So, yeah, they became quite loyal fans.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's good.
with everything. But his family, we're all, when you're a racing family, everybody knows that racing sometimes comes first with a lot of things.
Boy,
so
tell me about
just
it.
the way it is.
Absolutely. Well, once again, folks, everybody that's here, I want to congratulate all of you again, and you, buddy, on being inducted into the Carb Hall of Fame. Had to come a little ways to do it, but I know you raced around this area, and I think it's really nice of Carb to show their appreciation for all of that you did all those years in the racing, and to be inducted into the Carb Hall of Fame. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it very much. So,
My pleasure, Clayton. I love doing these.
Oh, yeah, that's
It's
awesome.
like taking a step back in history.
yes, it
Very
is. And trust me, I kicked myself so many times that I didn't, because a friend told me, "Why don't you set a recorder down?"
Yeah.
At the time. But I told you, my mom, Eleanor, didn't want to listen to those racing stories too many times, did she?
All right, that's going to do it, folks.
Okay, thank you.